So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Welcome to Breakthrough Mastermind Group. So, the premise of this group is to build a foundation on what I call the 8 lifestyle categories. Today's talk is going to be on spirituality, which is very important and unique to everybody. So, the mission ultimately of Breakthrough Mastermind Group is to bring intellectual knowledge to everybody in this group, so that we can enhance our lives personally and professionally. So again, the topic is spirituality for today. Now, I've spoken with everybody in this group a little bit differently about those components of spirituality. And although everybody comes from a different place or maybe very similar beliefs, there is some linear aspect in all of these. And one of the things that I've really liked, has anybody ever heard or seen this book before? Ernest Becker, The Denial of Death.
No, that looks really good.
I would highly recommend diving into this. So this is really on the psychological part. And the interesting thing about the psychology that it discusses is that in the history of humanity, there has always been a search for why we're here. And that's one of the beautiful things that religion allows people to do, is to have that ultimate purpose, to have that bigger image, that greater good, to be able to have that community and really put your spirit into something. So, I'm gonna share a little quote with you that I read this morning that is slightly applicable. This is in a different book. It's on the subconscious. It's great. So it says, "You are the sum total of your own thoughts. You can keep from entertaining negative thought and imagery. The way to get rid of darkness is with light. The way to overcome cold is with heat. The way to overcome the negative thought is to substitute the good thought. Affirm the good and the bad will vanish." So I really like that because it kind of brings the light to perspective. And that is a common ground for the spirituality, is having that light, having that purpose, having that fulfillment, having something greater than ourselves to live and aspire towards, and to really center and focus every day. So everybody has a different approach, whether that's practicing in a synagogue or going to church or temple or in your own home, or meditating, whatever that looks like. It's to be able to kind of reach within, touch your own spirit, and then help for the greater good. So today we're a little bit of a smaller group, so we're going to have a little bit of a different spin. I would really love to hear from everybody on the group, and I can put this in the chat, but really, what has worked for you? What are your daily or weekly practices? What are some areas that you would like to aspire towards and maybe change in that spiritual approach? So if anybody wants to kind of share, I'm going to go ahead and type this in the chat real quick. Does anybody have any thoughts that they would like to approach? Ashley?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I would love to speak. So actually, this morning,
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Ash.
Okay, hold on. Let's see if I can.
Uh-oh. Now we can't see you.
Okay, is this better?
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, there might be some background noise from my kids, but anyways, every morning I take some quiet time to reflect, pray. I take that time to pray for all of my family and friends. I make sure to name them, call them by name, just because I've read that, there's no better way to be there for your friends and family than to pray for them. And anyways, I was kind of having in my reflection time, just kind of thinking about how I just really felt like I need a break. I just want to get away. I just want to get away from all of the tough things that have been going on in my life over the past 9 months or so. But then I kind of had this thought. I was like, well, you know what? Even if I were to go on a trip or something and come back and feel refreshed, the reality is the things are going away. Like the situations are not going away. Like the hard stuff is not going away. So I just felt good about like, okay, you're doing the right things. Like you're taking the time every day to just practice what's going to get you through the day to day in the best way possible. So that I don't feel like running away. You know what I mean? Like I know I'm not the only one who's been there. Um, but that's where spirituality comes in for me. Like I just have to give it to God. He's to me the only one who could even possibly um fix things or like the darkness of this world or handle it, you know what I mean? And so um that is just where I come from. Like if I'm feeling weak, it's helpful for me to pray about it, and then that helps me let it go, and put it in the hands of God and just feel better. um yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at. That's what I've got.
No, that's beautiful. And I think one thing that you had mentioned that's really relevant is those demons. And really that's just a word for the negative thoughts or the problems that we face. And what I found in my personal experience and working with other people is that geographic relocation or abstaining and kind of blocking that time out, it never solves the problem, right? We're always going to have a form of a demon or a problem or a dilemma that's will always be in front of us. So oftentimes you may have heard this terminology, eat the frog or eat the elephant, whatever works for you. But facing these things and taking them head on and just eradicating it, because it's always going to be there. And it doesn't matter if you move to China or to Hawaii, or if you take a vacation for 2 months, you're still going to have those in front of you until you face them. And it sounds like from what you said, Ashley, that the way that you find that enlightenment or that spiritual in tuneness is through God, and to be able to share that and reach out to other people and have these conversations and these prayers and these thoughts and really ingrain into your subconscious that there's a faith here. Right. So I really appreciate you sharing that with me. I'm curious if anybody else has anything to comment off of what Ashley just said. That's okay. So
Actually,
go ahead,
actually,
Marlene.
I do, Keegan, and I'll make it brief. Um, Wednesday night, we have a wonderful interactive Bible study. And last night, what they did was they took it into more of a song service. And then people got up and read some different scriptures in between. And there were several that went forward and stood and prayed. And it really refreshed my entire mind, my spirit, my outlook, my energy was different. But the most important part of my day happened at the end of the service when I came home and I dropped my friend Gail off at her house. And the kids got out of the car and it was just her and I. And here comes in my opinion, one of the most important things about our belief in our spirituality. Number one, we have to know and understand. And number two, we have to be wise counsel. There's no wishy-washy. And it was my time where I had to be able to minister to her and to be strong and positive and good counsel. And remember, there's always a way for us to tell someone the things they need to hear, even if it's the most difficult thing to receive, because I've been on both sides of it. So timing, compassion, understanding who you are, understanding who God is, asking for that discernment from God so that the right words come out and the right attitude and the right mental, it all ties in. And it comes from taking that time, like Ashley said, taking that time at some point every day to say, okay, I'm sitting here, I'm being quiet, and I'm asking God to lead me, to show me the way. And a lot of times I find it through my Bible, just taking that time of reading some scripture and just letting it soak in. Because sometimes I'm a little bit more hard-headed on some subjects than on others. So that's my share for the day. And I hope that encourages all of us and helps us kind of think about how our day-to-day, we never know whose life we are going to be a part of and how we need to be having that positive effect on them.
Mm.
That was beautiful,
I
Marlene.
want to say something.
Yeah, Rosa.
Yeah. So something that I see as a commonality between everything that everyone has shared, thank you for that, by the way, is, and something I want to push it a little further, any spiritual practice or healing activity can be both a painkiller or a true spiritual experience. And something that you, Keegan, mentioned was the relationship between the light and the dark, and that darkness comes from us not willing to look at it, and then the light comes in and it helps us see it and love it for what it is, which I think is very beautiful. And my personal passion is normalizing the activity of being spiritual, because it's such a, like, breathing is a spiritual practice, because we're literally breathing the air that is the same for everyone on this planet. Like, we're connecting through breath to this greater thing that is more than us. Singing, someone mentioned singing at the church, it's breathing with sound. Again, we're connecting to something that is bigger. Breathing, breath moves things inside of our body and helps us move that same breath with our body, which is so freaking cool. Like, yay, dance and all the physical activities, like what? Yeah, I think it's, to me, there's so many ways to find spirituality in these mundane activities, and so many ways to lose spirituality in the activities that are deemed spiritual. So it's honestly about constant checking in. Okay, what am I doing? Why am I doing? How am I affecting myself? How am I affecting others? And it's so cool, yet so complicated and so simple.
I really like what you just said, Rosa. It's really great, right? Because there's this great book by Chogyam Trungpa called Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. And essentially it is, when you get so focused on the path that you lose sight of what the outcome that you're trying to achieve is. And you think that the path is the outcome, right? So if your focus is to connect with God, but then you get so focused on the path that you forget that your focus is to connect with God. And so, like, what you said just kind of is like, hey, look, you got to bring it to every day. You got to bring it to every moment. You got to get present what the outcome is, and not it's about the outcome, not the methodology. And so that's really well said. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That was really cool.
Absolutely beautiful. I couldn't agree more. I think that, Ashley, to Marlene, to Rosa, to Josa, all of your points, there's this element of this daily unwavering commitment. And it's really interesting when we look at the word faith, and this is just a quick definition. It is complete trust or confidence in someone or something. And everybody said a different element of belief, right? It doesn't matter necessarily what avenue you take, as long as you're committed to that process. And to Joe's point, that bigger picture. And Rosa, I love what you said about the contrast from light and dark and being in tune spiritually with yourself. And the interesting thing is, if we look across the entire world, there are all of these gods, and nobody really has the right or wrong answer. There really isn't a right or wrong answer, right? It's really what works for you and staying committed to that process every day and being in tune and being, like Marlene said, unwavering. It doesn't matter what situation you're in. I hear this quote a lot, and it's not necessarily specific to spirit, but you don't want to really judge somebody when they're at their peak. It's easy to be happy and excited and exuberant when you're on top of the world. But how do you judge yourself when you're on the bottom, when you're going through these dark times? And again, back to that introductory phrase, you've got to find that light. You've got to contrast the cold with heat. So beautiful points, everybody. I'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for that. I'm curious, Sandra, Whitney, Alvaro, Hayden, do you guys have anything that you would like to interject, again, based on the spiritual side? Sandra?
I just wanted to add, with Rosa talking about the breath and how it's shared by all of us. I feel like I'm always in the process of learning and discovering and reading and trying to open my mind to new ideas. And one thing that I'm really focused on now is the idea of letting go of the idea of separation and coming to the understanding that we are all a collective and we're a whole and we are all one, and try to let go of that feeling of I am here and I am me and you are over there and you are separate from me, because we're all part of the same energetic world and we all vibrate together. And we're not as we get very focused on what we can sense with our five senses, and which is matter, and we're less focused on the energy that exists simultaneously. And I find that fascinating. So that's part of my spiritual growth right now. And I do, for my daily practice, I meditate. I try to meditate twice a day, but sometimes I just fall asleep. But I find that, and gratitude. One thing I practice with my children at dinner every night is we talk about what we're grateful for.
Beautiful points. And again, you can start to see this common trend, right? And it's so interesting to me, because throughout the evolution of this mastermind group, every topic is a little bit different, whether it's personal development or career or whatever it is. But there's always a congruency. And Sandra, I really love what you said about, how we're all connected in some way. And, again, back to Rosa's point, the breath that we take and the energy and all these beautiful things that in a way connect us. So again, I think it's just such a simple way to make that comparison between the light and dark, and what energy are you putting into the world? What are you sharing with other people and in this journey? And again, back to Joe's point, it's there's a destination, right? There's an end result, but it's also this beautiful journey that we have along the process. And sometimes people just get so caught up in the process itself, and they think that pain is a bad thing. But pain is such a beautiful thing. We can't appreciate the sunlight without the rain, right? And that, again, that's that light and that dark. So beautiful point, Sandra. And I know you're really big on the gratitude. I think that's such a critical component, for everybody. It doesn't matter where you are in life, there's always something to be grateful for. So to be able to identify that every day, and when we talk about the subconscious, the way that it's the most impactful is in the very beginning of your day, in the morning, and at night before you go to bed. And the reason for that is the subconscious is operating at 10.5 wave cycles when we first wake up. So if you want to set the tone for a proper day, practice that gratitude, practice that spirituality, find that light before you get into those daunting tasks or those foreseeable obstacles. And then again, to close off the night, you want to put those good thoughts back into your head again. So beautiful point, Sandra. I'm curious, Whitney or Alvaro, What would you like to share? I know Alvaro's got a lot of beautiful information on this topic, and I would love to hear from both of you.
What Sandra shared sounded a lot like what I would say. Actually, I try to meditate regularly and just keep my energy in a positive place, in a grateful place, just knowing that even in the rough times to be grateful and to know that this too shall pass and it will work out. And that's kind of how I live and how I spread energy to others as well.
Beautiful. And this too shall pass. I believe in that as well, right? It's part of the process. And again, if it was all sunshine and rainbows every day, we wouldn't appreciate it. It would just be a daily thing. So you've got to have these ebbs and flows in business. You've got to have these ups and downs in your personal life. It is so much a part of the process. So thank you, Whitney. Alvaro, I'd love to hear from you. What are some of your thoughts in the spiritual realm?
I think that, thanks, Keegan. I came in a little late and just catching up on what people are saying. And for me, there's, just from a neuroscientific standpoint, I would look at it from what is it to practice faith and have faith, which are for me, two distinctly different things.
Yes.
And I think that, faith is an exercise a little bit in time travel. Faith for me points to a time in the future more often than not. We could think of the past that we had faith at a certain point in time that we may have lost. But I think in general, we hold on to faith as a hope for the future. And when you look at it from a neuroscientific standpoint, the chemical soup you're looking at is probably something of a mix of dopamine and oxytocin. And how do you produce that? So for us who are feeling sometimes that we've lost faith, that perhaps hope is not really our thing right now, how do we shift that in order to get back into a space of having faith? And the exercises for that, a lot of people have spoken about meditation, about being in the present, and I think that that's great to create the calmness, perhaps, or the openness to see a bigger picture, to have a vision. And I think at the same time, some of the things that, the other thing that was mentioned was gratitude, which is great. It really sets the stage again for the capacity for us to be able to see the horizon and then a little bit beyond and have hope for it. So, in the terms of having faith or practicing faith, it's that tying of having a vision, a positive vision of the future, and bringing it to the present. And what would the exercises be to do that? So practicing gratitude, practicing meditation. And I think on the day-to-day, there is a component of knowing that if you take care of yourself and others, it will open the door for having that level of trust in your life that in a neuroscientific way would show up as oxytocin in your system, of a chemical reaction that gives you a sense of trust.
May I pitch in?
Absolutely.
I think it's so interesting, the practicing versus having faith and the trust. Like right when you asked that question, the first thing I was like, well, it's about trusting that it's all a part of the bigger thing. And the fastest that all of the activities that typically give us that sense of calm or faith or hope have to do with disassociating from our ego and our body, our self-centered, kind of like Sandra was saying, having a moment to step away and have that perspective to see where things are at. And there's so many, the exercises are there. Anything can be an exercise. I was looking at a tree outside of my window right now. It's just literally just looking at how it's functioning is already giving me like, oh, I can have so many problems, but the tree's still going to grow there. I'm so tiny, like, because we're self-centered creatures. That's who we are. And I think there's no reason to be ashamed of it. I think that's life. That's what it is. But the reminding that we are surrounded by so much that has existed there before us, will exist after us, if climate change, blah blah blah, hopefully. Like it's using these practices to disassociate, to look from a distance and then come back. It's not about always staying in that one place, for me at least. I think that's silly, because then we're not just spirits. We have the bodies, we have the egos, we have emotions, we're interacting with all of these living creatures and objects that have all these things as well. So it's about the going in and out and learning about who we are and what the whole thing is about. It's all about learning, and then it makes it a lot easier to function from one thing to another.
Yeah, beautiful point. Go ahead, Alvaro.
That's it. That actually brought up for me something that wasn't sitting right for me on the meditation. I think ultimately when I meditate and I practice meditation, it's about the present, and it's about the process of entering a stream of consciousness that is not my own. It is a universal stream of consciousness of just being in the universe.
Mm.
And I got to say that is not a place of faith in my definition of faith.
Mm-hmm.
If I think of faith in the term, if from a religious perspective, perhaps I'm thinking of the practice of praying, of having hope for the future, that things are positive or will be positive. And that is actually not aligned with meditation, which is about being in the present and just, it's a really interesting distinction of having faith and practicing faith. But the meditation,
Well,
I think that,
that's good. I just, I think I'll let you finish your thought, and then I'll say one.
Yeah, no, you go ahead. It's just an interesting concept that meditation for me, when I really think about it, is not about the practice of faith. It's about fully being in the present and dissolving your boundaries, your physical boundaries and your ego, to allow yourself to be in that stream of consciousness. And I don't see faith as being part of that, but go ahead.
No, I don't disagree. I think that the best definition of faith that I ever heard anybody say, it was this interview between Oprah and 50 Cent, right? And 50 Cent said, she said, I hear you're deathly afraid of flying. And he says, I am. He says, and then what happens? He says, well, then I get in the plane, and then I pray to God, and I put my life in God's hands, and then I'm not afraid anymore. And that's it. I'm at that moment. And she said, well, how could that be? How could you stop being afraid? He says, well, I would be a hypocrite if I put my life in God's hands and I would still be afraid. If I put my life in God's hands, I have faith that God is going to do exactly with my life the way it's supposed to go. And I think that that's very different than what you're talking about, Alvaro. That then in meditation, what we're looking to do is connect with source at this moment. But I think that that there could be an access to that through faith, but it happens not in faith, but at the moment right after, right? So that there's a possibility of that, but it's just a different avenue, a different on-ramp, if you will, to that, right? I did this.
It's an acceptance of the present as it's because that's all we have, and that's what's meant to be.
Yes. I recently did a course which was an inquiry into death and loss with a Diamond Heart approach teacher, and one of the practices that I took away from myself is every morning I wake up, and I put my feet down and I go, well, I could die today, right? So and so, who will I be? And then I think about that. I think about, who am I going to be today? Like, I could die today. Every day I put my feet on the ground. This is the day. This could be the day that I die, right? So who will I be today? What will I give? How present will I be? What moment am I going to focus on? What, and it's really interesting. If you got 2 seconds, I'll share. Can I share something, Keegan, that actually happened for me in that course?
Of course.
We took a break, and in the break, this poem came to me, right? And it's, sweet, sweet death. Thanks for reminding me of living. I nearly forgot how blessed I am to walk, to see, to be hungry, to breathe. Sweet, sweet death, until you came calling. I thought I was miserable. I was cranky and angry and craggy and sometimes downright mean. Sweet, sweet death. Thanks for setting me straight. I can see the blue skies, even when they're gray. I can see the sunshine in the midst of the rainstorm, and the smile in my wife's scowl. Sweet, sweet death. Thanks for all that you've given me. I appreciate it. I do hate to be rude. Don't come back for a while. I want to hang with style and a smile. Sweet, sweet death. You can give me these moments. Don't be stingy or crude. Nevertheless, it will all go your way. Dude, damsel, the non-binary too. In the end, we're all yours. What's a decade or two? And so that's it. This is what we've got. We've got this moment. We have each other.
Joe, gotta stop and let that sink in, man. That was beautiful.
I love that.
It was, and I think it's just the whole idea of it all shall pass, it all too will pass, and the idea of impermanence at a different scale of the time of a lifetime versus time of the day, where I'm happy and then I'm sad and then I'm hungry and then I'm not, and then it's cold and then it's hot. But it's like zooming it out a little more, and I'm sure there's plenty ways that you zoom it out even more and more and more and more.
Love that, Rosa.
Yeah, and one thing to
Rosa,
Thank you.
Go ahead, Lisa.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Rosa, is that concept of impermanence. And that's what I come back to almost daily, is that the bad times are not going to last. Now, unfortunately, on the flip side, the good times aren't going to last either. And as I, especially with children, and I have neighbors that have a newborn baby and a 1.5-year-old. And I was like, and they're in the midst of this insanity. And I was like, I have an 18 and a 21. And I was like, that's going to pass. My sadness about this change of life with my daughter going to college, that's going to pass. Like all of this stuff. And it's so comforting, this idea of impermanence. So I'm glad you brought that up.
That's beautiful. I think that, that strikes an element of balance. And one of the things is that, Joe, thank you for sharing that. I'm glad, because I wanted to see that poem again. But one of the things that is really relevant is that, when we reference that light and that dark, that element of pain, and again, based off of that poem, is that we don't really appreciate all of the beautiful things that we have. We sometimes take all of this for granted, whether it's life or our limbs or our organs or whatever that comes across as, until it's actually questioned or until it is taken away from us, and you don't appreciate the health until you've gone through the sickness. you know, and this all boils back down to this resolve and this element of the presence and the being and the faith and everything kind of congealed together. Because for me, for example, the way that I can always put myself in the present outside of meditation, which is a fantastic resource, but outside of that, it's just putting myself in nature, isolating myself where there's nothing but the present. You know, the bugs are still going to continue to go on their way. Like Rosa said, the tree is still going to grow regardless of the problems that I have. Nature is always in the present. The wind is going to blow regardless of what I do. There is a bigger element. And again, back to Sandra's point and some of the other points is that we're all connected in this way. And it's such a beautiful thing. And Lisa, I like what you said and Rosa about the impermanence and the ups and the downs and the ebbs and the flows, and this too shall pass. And, you know, just being in tune. And I'm curious, based on all of that information, I saw this poll the other day on social media, and a lady said, you know, there are 3 categories. I've got myself, my spouse, and my children. Which would you rank first in importance? And I would be interested to hear what some of your thoughts are. If it came down to yourself, your spouse, and your children, how would you rank these in terms of importance for you? Okay, well, I'll just go.
I feel like the right answer. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want to hear from you.
Yeah, I would say on the daily habits, I would say myself, because you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to put your own mask on before assisting others. So I would say, in a general sense, I would put myself first. But if it came down to a life or death decision or something where I had to choose one or the other, it would be my kids. Absolutely. I would throw myself in front of a train to save them. That's how I feel.
Lisa, thank you for that, Whitney. Lisa, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Pretty much exactly what Whitney just said.
I'll
So
go this way, so he doesn't get scared.
I feel like the right answer is supposed to be others first, especially women. We're trained to like take care of everybody else. And that's the issue. When we get to a certain point in our lives, we're not equipped to take care of ourselves. So I agree though, Whitney. I think it's overall, unless there's imminent danger, it's taking care of yourself so that you do have the strength physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually to take care of others.
100%. So has everybody here flown on a plane before? Raise their hands. Everybody in here, you guys are familiar with the oxygen theory?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my reference here, is that when you're on a plane, they tell you that, look, if anything goes to happen and that oxygen mask comes down, so you have to put it on yourself first, and then you put it on your child or your significant other, the person next to you. And to both of your point, Lisa and Whitney, I agree with you. And I think that regardless of the empathetic approach or whatever that looks like, is, you know, Whitney said the cup half full, right? And you can't really serve others unless you're fully at your best capacity. And this ties into that spiritual understanding. And I understand that everybody's in different situations. You may have one child or no children or 5 kids. And it always comes up with, you know, I love the excuses. I hear them all the time, is that, well, I've got kids and I've got bills and I've got this and that. Everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. And if you're not in tune with your spirit and you're not at your fullest capacity, how can you serve the people that you need to serve at their fullest capacity? You've got to be in tune with yourself and be able to reach at that deeper level so that you can contribute back, because in a sense, we are all connected. So I just thought that was an interesting perspective. If anybody else has anything to share on that, I would love to hear from you as well.
I want to be a devil's advocate to that point, even though I fully agree. But sometimes being in service to others becomes a spiritual practice in its own way. And again, it goes back to the balance between making sure we're doing it internally and then zooming out and looking at it from the outside and seeing how we fit within the greater thing. But there is that point when you were speaking, I'm like, yes, but there is also this. So that's my 50 cents.
No, I love it. And that's why we're here, is to garnish these other perspectives. Alvaro, I'd love to hear from you. I'm not sure where you just stepped into this magical realm that's behind you, but what are your thoughts here?
Just a local river that I live close to. Yeah, I think that, the question is situational. There's an ebb and flow in life, and there's a time where we come first, and there's a time when others come first. And even on a day-to-day basis, there's going to be times where you put yourself first and times when you put others first. And I think it's not about choosing, it's about regulation. I think what you want to look at, myself, I take this time in the morning, it's me time. I go out every morning and I walk alone. I don't invite others. It's really important for me to be on my own. And yet there's other times in the day when I want to break bread with others, and I want to enjoy meals with others, or I want to collaborate and work on projects with others. And so I've been in the situation in the airplane where you reach for the oxygen mask, and I've been asked to put myself second in that situation because it was necessary. So how do you reconcile that? You have to make a choice, right? Are we working as a team in order to increase chance for survival? And if so, somebody sometimes has to sacrifice. And I've been in that situation. So what do you do, right? And I chose to step up and do what I was asked to do. So that is something that you just you don't know how you'll react in the moment. And I think it's less about judgment and trying to think about the choice, and more about learning how to regulate. If you can practice regulation on a regular basis, then you'll be better suited at the present moment to make those hard choices if your back's up against the wall.
Beautiful points.
That all goes back to being present, right? That's really great, because it all goes back to being present in the moment that you're in. And so it's very powerful to keep bringing yourself back to the moment that you're in. We spend a lot of time fantasizing about the future and lamenting about the past, right? And so we miss the moment we're in very often because we're not in it. And so if you could just keep bringing yourself back to this moment, I'm here with you, enjoying you right now. I get to be with you. Lucky me, right? And so that's where we need to be, is here, where we are right now. And if we can just keep doing that, it's very powerful.
Joe,
Absolutely.
I agree. That the present is a beautiful place, and I also agree with a lot of people who feel that humans have a special capacity to time travel because of our capacity to imagine, because we don't live the past. We don't actually remember the past. We imagine the past, just the way we imagine the future.
Yes.
And I think we need to practice that as well in a conscious way. So it's this dual capacity of being in the present, knowing that I'm imagining as well. I'm imagining the past, I'm imagining the future, and really appreciating that, because the reason that we get in an airplane is somebody was able to imagine. A group of people were able to imagine. We're tribal in nature, and we use that imagination for survival and for increasing our chances of survival of the species. And so for me, again, it goes back to regulation and being in the present and also appreciating the fact that we have this capacity to roam.
I
Beautiful.
so agree with that. Sorry, I'm gonna.
No, you're good. That's the whole purpose of this group, right?
There, something that I had two things come up for me through this. First of all, yes, I definitely agree. The whole idea of imagining, dreaming, daydreaming, that's what motivates us. Because if we're always in the present moment, we're not going to want to do anything. We're just going to sit still on the top of a mountain and be fine. But that whole ability to imagine things and like what if is what makes us being in that space where we're dreaming creates an image that we are attracted to. And it takes us coming back to where we're at to figure out how we get to that image. And then that's the regulation that I think Alvaro is talking about, where it's like here and there, and then here and there. I had a conversation very recently with someone about the value of the monks in the mountains, how they're in complete solitude, and how do they, but his argument was that they're not a part of the society, so they're choosing to not leave impact. And I couldn't quite put my finger, like I knew there was like it was important that people do that, but I couldn't figure out how to get at it. Because first thing was like they do know like the least amount of harm because they're only engaging in practices that are raising overall like, planetary and vibration, etc., etc. But then in most cases, these are the people who are still there, find this deep understanding of the present moment, and they come back to interact with their communities, and then they go away. And that's, again, it's the same. They don't just sit there for themselves, because they're going to die. Quite literally. That's when we die. Anyways, I'm done.
No, that was great.
That's really great, right? Because it's really great because it's about that's how you elevate consciousness, right? You have to be able to go and do that and come to a new understanding, and then come back and share that understanding. So their function is to come back and share that understanding every time that it elevates, right? And as it elevates and as they share the understanding, and then we imbibe that understanding and share with others, right? It keeps elevating the consciousness, because it happens. You can see it. It happens generation over generation over generation. So it's like a little chipping, but at some point it alters everything, right? And so it's really good.
Karma says that all things are connected, right? And every act or thought has consequences. So going back to the oxygen mask on first, if we believe in karma, the way that we show up is going to affect the way others react to us, right? So if we come at you, we've all met those people that are like, everybody's assholes, everybody's a jerk. And it's like, really? I think everybody's so nice. And it's like, it's the way you show up. So if you do take care of yourself first, and then you're going to change that reaction, and people are going to be smiling at you. You open the door for somebody, you get this amazing reaction back. So by doing that internal work, and you're changing the reactions that you receive. And it's such a simple concept, but I don't know why so many people don't see that just by changing.
It's so hard. Like, we all are coming from very different history. And if that's something that we know as true, that's how we see ourselves. If we think of ourselves as an asshole, even subconsciously, everyone else will see us as an asshole and respond in the way that like you would respond to an asshole. And obviously that's from the reverse effect, and like, oh, everyone is an asshole to me. But it's all like we can receive what have the capacity to receive.
It's
like,
all only ever a mirror.
That's
100%.
Exactly it, Joe.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
So just
Every moment, it's all only ever a mirror.
Yep.
I've got a couple last thoughts before we close out here, and this is really a consolidation on all four of your points from the last couple of minutes, Joe, Lisa, Alvaro, and Rosa. Is that there's this balance, there's this power of choice, there's this element of the presence, the past, and the future. And ultimately, there's a major element of our interpretation. So oftentimes, even in the past or in the present, it's just the way that we interpret it. And, I just want to share something with you. And this is that thought. And this is, again, about that preparation component, right? Is that, we practice these things every single day so that when the moment is called upon us and we are faced with that pain, then we can find the outlet, the pleasure in that situation. So specifically, I think back to my mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when she was 30 years old. So she's had this for over 2 decades. And, there was this element as a young child that I felt that I had to mentally prepare that at any point in time, she could be taken from me. And I've got 2 younger sisters as well. And I had to be mentally, physically, and emotionally prepared for that pain, for my family, for my mom, for my sisters. And, we talk about the presence, we talk about the future, we talk about the past, and it's this culmination. And we talk about the energy that we all share together, and, the balance and the preparation and our interpretation. And, it all comes back to the entire point of the spirituality. And the beautiful thing is that everybody has a little bit of a different definition, right? And a different meaning and a different interpretation. But how are you practicing this daily? How are you contributing to your life and to other people's lives, ultimately, to have that greater sense of fulfillment and that greater sense of purpose? So, guys, this was absolutely beautiful. I loved the conversation piece that we all were able to share today. It was amazing to hear from everybody. Right before we close out, I just want to see if anybody has any last minute statements or questions or comments before we really wrap up.
Just the last thing I got is you are all loved. I have to jump because I have another call, but love you all. Thank you for being in my life.
Bye, Joe.
Bye.
Thank you. So on that note,
It's 11 o'clock.
I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody. It was absolutely impactful to hear everybody's thoughts and perspectives and have some of these things brought to the light and really relevant into our lives. So I just want to say thank you again. You guys are incredible. I'm really looking forward to our next call, which is on Tuesday. If you have any questions or need anything from me, please feel free to reach out in the meantime. And thank you again, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks, Keegan.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.